It was raining lightly when we pulled up to the Glassbridge Pavilion, and there was something poetic about that, the way the drizzle softened the lights above the marble entrance, the way it blurred the judgment I already knew was waiting. Inside, my daughter Noelle's 16th birthday was being celebrated in the kind of venue. People booked a year in advance, with linen napkins pressed like origami, and ice sculptures that existed just long enough to remind you how cold a place could be. I stayed in the car, not because I was hesitant, but because I knew exactly what waited for me beyond those glass doors. Talia, my fiancée, reached across the console and placed her hand over mine. It was warm, steady. Sure, that was Talia in every sense. Never one to flinch. Her touch didn't ask questions. It simply understood. We didn't need to talk about it again. I wasn't officially invited, and we both knew why. Helen, my ex-wife, had made her stance clear months ago. No plus ones. No disruptions. No outside energy. She said it with that smug curl in her lip she always wore when she felt power tilt in her favor. Her new husband, Martin Vexley, didn't bother with subtleties. When Noelle, bless her brave heart, asked if her dad could bring someone, Martin had laughed. Not kindly. Not the sort of laugh that leaves room for dignity. No plus ones for the help, he'd said, standing in his pristine foyer like he was auditioning for a billionaire villain role. He already believed he'd earned the help. That was me in his eyes, someone who failed to climb fast enough. Someone who didn't speak the language of venture capital, or designer shoes, or destination galas. Martin didn't like people he couldn't control, and I wasn't his employee or his sycophant. That made me a threat, but this wasn't about him. It wasn't about Helen, either. Noel, my daughter. 16 today, I remembered when she was 6, drawing rainbows with both hands like her imagination couldn't keep up with her fingers. She used to say I was her favorite color, somewhere between blue and gold. She didn't always say it aloud anymore. But the way her texts came in late at night, the way she asked if I'd be there tonight, despite the rules, told me she still meant it. I was going to show up for her. I always did. The Civic's engine ticked quietly as we sat under the rain-speckled awning. I watched a stream of luxury cars pull in, Bentleys, Range Rovers. One Lamborghini stalled briefly because its driver forgot it wasn't built for subtlety. The valets rushed. Umbrellas snapped open and closed. Laughter drifted from the covered walkway like it was floating above real life. Talia looked effortlessly elegant, even seated. Her dress was a deep green that pulled the gold from her skin and the power from any room. She didn't wear statement jewelry. She didn't need to. Her presence said enough. You sure you want to do this? I asked. Not because I doubted her, but because I needed to offer her an out. The rain had made everything feel quieter, like the world was holding its breath. She smiled. You're the one who's unsure. I go where you go. We're not here to ask permission, and that was why I loved her. Not for her money, not for her title, not even for how she managed to calm every storm inside me with nothing more than a look. But because she never treated me like a guest in my own life. Talia never saw me as the man who didn't make it. She saw me as the man who hadn't quit. I opened the glove compartment and pulled out the card Noelle had slipped into my jacket the night before. It was small, handwritten, folded into quarters. Please come, Dad, even if Mom says otherwise. It won't feel like my birthday if you're not there. That was all I needed. I opened the door into the misty air, and Talia followed, heels clicking lightly against the pavement. We walked toward the entrance slowly, not to delay, but to let the moment unfold. I could already feel the eyes from the valet. Stand, recognition, uncertainty. The man nearest the podium stepped forward, uniform pristine, hair wet at the edges from guiding umbrellas all evening. Sir, he said cautiously, are you here for the Vexley event? His tone was respectful, but I heard the subtext. Do you belong here? Before I could respond, Talia moved one step ahead of me. The rain brushed her shoulders like it wasn't brave enough to land properly. Another valet behind us caught sight of her, and his entire demeanor shifted, like someone had flipped a switch. He straightened. Madam Chairman, he said, bowing slightly, shall we park your Bentley in your reserved spot? I didn't have to look to know Helen had arrived at the door at that exact moment. That's how these nights were scripted. Timing always betrayed the people who thought they controlled the room. Helen's mouth fell open. Her jaw twitched. Just once, the way it used to when she saw something she couldn't quite control, she looked stunning. As always, her dress a high-neck designer piece in ice blue. Cold and expensive. Like everything she valued, her eyes flicked from me to Talia, like she was trying to calculate whether this was a scene or a scandal. "You brought her?" She spat, ignoring every rule of decorum she pretended to value. I didn't flinch, I didn't raise my voice, I simply nodded once, and replied, "You mean the woman who owns this building?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of every assumption they'd ever made about me. Full of every conversation I hadn't been invited to, and for once, I didn't feel small, I felt inevitable. Talia didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply reached for my hand again, the way she had in the car, a quiet statement. Nothing performative. We weren't there to make a scene. We were there because a 16-year-old girl with more heart than most adults wanted her father at her birthday, and I wasn't about to disappoint her. He still believed the room was his. He approached like a politician mid-scandal, all charm and calculation. "Talia Pierce," he said, holding out his hand like he expected her to fall for the illusion of formality. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight?" Talia looked at his hand, then at his face and didn't move. "Clearly," she said, with a gentle smile, one that held just enough chill to crack porcelain. She didn't have to mention that Martin had once emailed her. Twice, actually, begging for a spot on the Lenaris advisory board. He hadn't even gotten a reply. I remembered her saying, "He reminds me of a man who watches a parade and thinks it's for him." That same man now stood 3 feet in front of her, trying to control the narrative with a handshake. Martin retracted his hand slowly, trying not to look like he'd been dismissed. "You here for the tech panel or the after-party?" he asked, desperate to spin. "Actually," she said, her eyes sliding to me, "I'm here for the father of the birthday girl." She said it clearly, not loudly, but clearly enough, that sentence alone rewrote the entire evening for half the people within earshot. He wasn't just a guest, he wasn't just the ex, he wasn't just the help, he was standing beside the woman who owned more equity than the rest of the room combined, and they were together. Martin chuckled nervously. "Well, we're all just here to support Noelle. Beautiful night, isn't it?" He glanced toward the photographer, probably hoping for a shot that would flatten the humiliation. But Talia didn't give him the out. "It is," she said, despite the weather and the reception. Just then, Helen appeared again. She had changed from ice queen to hostess mask on. Smile now, so tight it looked surgical.